folks. How's it going?
Going well, you?
It's Halloween, so it's pretty good.
Isn't it wild how we all just showed up dressed like this?
Welcome to my home. I'm Dr. Mark Hatala, and we're shooting the spooky topics in psychology. And so we're all in costume. I am Steve Jobs, and he's back over here too. And maybe everybody could introduce themselves and what they're dressed as.
I will start. I am Annie, and I'm dressed as a happy pumpkin.
I'm Zeca, and I'm dressed as many scary pumpkins.
I'm Will, and I'm dressed as Clint Eastwood from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
I'm Maddy. I'm a deconstructed banana smoothie.
I'm Ashley, and I'm a celestial witch.
Outstanding. So our topic for today is intelligence testing. Now, intelligence testing is really what put psychology on the map, starting with the Army Alpha and Beta tests during World War II. And I believe we've all taken the ACT or the SAT. Is that safe to say? So there are serious questions about the validity of intelligence testing. And so I thought I'd open that up as our discussion question. Do you guys think that IQ testing is valid? Doing it that way. Well, go ahead.
Yes and no. I think the idea is there. I think it's important to be able to understand if kids, need additional help, or the opposite, if kids are so far advanced that, you're actually slowing them down. I think, though, a lot of times they have a lot of negative things come from them. One of the biggest things is, so my mom is a psychological examiner. She's had to deal with IQ tests for a long time, and how much they've changed over the years. And one of the biggest things I know she's talked about is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that kids will sometimes have. The thing is with IQ tests is typically kids will know them from their parents, or whatnot, and it definitely becomes a thing. I mean, if you're a kid and you hear, you're not very smart, you have this low IQ, it makes you feel dumb. Or the opposite, you get this kind of, almost superiority complex.
Sure.
And I think that, and the thing is too with IQ, there are so many different ways to test how smart someone is. That is just one way. I don't think it's valid to use that and say, well, this is just how smart you are, this and that. And my dad's always joked, so the guy that made the IQ test, he must have been, been the smartest man in the world because he's the one who made it. Now, obviously, that's, a joke, but I think there is, I think there is truth to that idea that it's just, I don't know. I think it's very, very flawed. The idea is there, but I think it causes more problems than...
To go back to your original point, Binets, when he was contracted to make up the first test, he thought it would be to identify people who needed more help, rather than people who were necessarily high in IQ. Who would like to go next? Other thoughts?
I mean,
Ashley, please.
as a future teacher, and especially somebody who's trying to go into special education, this is a topic that's discussed all the time in all of my classes. Because, like you said, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy with a lot of intelligence testing where people will tell you you're smart or people will tell you you're dumb, and then they will treat you like that or you will believe it. And that just changes everything. The other big thing is that we don't really have a definition for what intelligence is.
True.
The whole concept of it, if you're going to have a test to show who is intelligent and who is not, you need a solid definition. And depending on the task, radically changes what is going to determine your success. And I feel like at the end of the day, that's really what we're going for, is will you be successful in school, in life, in your job? That's what we're trying to measure. And you need a radically wide set of skills to do those different things. So I think in a lot of my classes and a lot of the training they're doing for special education now, it's a lot more task-based, because you can be good at a task or you can be bad at a task. But how well you do on that task is not necessarily indicative of how well you will do on all tasks.
Sure.
So I think that there does need to be a reformation of it. We do have some like data that shows that people with low IQs will perform differently than people with high IQs, but I think a lot of that is more to do with the self-fulfilling prophecy and more to do with the social roles that they're filling rather than any inherent part of them. So I think they're bogus and that we should like tear them down and replace them with something that actually means something.
Being in special education classes with Ashley and also being a future special ed teacher, I do agree. I agree.
But all of us have taken those tests, and even if we're not in the classes. What do you guys think, too?
Yeah. In terms of
Zach, go ahead.
just a framework for understanding intelligence and what it is, and in large part because of the definitional problems we've had for decades, I vastly prefer the framework of multiple intelligences over
Howard
just
Gardner's
intelligence quotient. The idea that people are good at different fields of things, and we can quantify that a lot better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you guys in that they can be like bogus, but I also think that there is a lot of benefits for identifying children who need more help. I think maybe going about how we help them and how we tell them that they need more help can have a really dramatic impact on that self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think if they do need help and they're struggling in an ordinary classroom, I think that in that sense, like if they can't get those concepts without extra help, then they're going to give themselves that self-fulfilling prophecy of that they're just not capable of doing that, and then they're going to stop trying. So I think are really beneficial in being able to help kids who do need more help. But I think in terms of like kids, like there's a lot of gifted programs at schools and stuff, and I think those have a lot of benefits in helping like children kind of like go above and beyond, but I also think that it does give them kind of a sense of superiority over other kids, and
The show ponies of the school.
yeah, can be more harmful than helpful, I guess.
Well, and the other thing is, especially with gifted programs, a lot of the research has shown that especially depending on what age they get put into gifted programs, it's not really indicative of their ability level before they go in. Like if you put a third grader in gifted classes, then they might have been an equally performing student in 5th grade had they gone through the same classes, but now because they've had that extra attention, because they've had those higher standards, like they're doing better, but that could have been any of their peers, you know? And a lot of that also has to do with the fact that like they get tested by grade level, not necessarily by age. So like if you are somebody who started kindergarten when they were a little older than everybody else, then you're naturally a little higher performing than your peers because you have a couple months on them. And during the formative years of your elementary school, that's huge, you know? Like just being physically bigger than some of the other kids can be a huge factor on how you're viewed and how you perform. But like that's not necessarily a reason to say you're gifted. You know?
I don't want to get Will wound up about this, but it comes up with baseball players are born in particular months based on who they play against and that sort of thing. But and hockey players too, and so it's based on the league schedules. But Maddy, you haven't said anything yet. What do you think about this issue?
I agree with my peers and what they're saying, that it's just kind of outdated and isn't really applicable for most people or a lot of people. But something else I kind of want to go into is that I feel like that standardized IQ testing or whatever is a little bit classist in the sense that it expects people to know things that it kind of seems like it's like an upper to middle class kind of like umbrella over that, because it asks you all these terms that you're supposed to know. It asks you like all these math questions and reading and science and all this stuff. And for people who are living in poverty, a lot of times they don't have access to those kind of resources that can teach them all that stuff. Their education isn't the same as people who are living in areas where they do have higher like education, and so I think that's really unfair to those people because it's hurting them before it could even help them.
If I could give an example, I talk about this in class too. That's there was an SAT question that used to be shoe is to marathon as yacht is to blank, and the answer is regatta which is a boat race, but who knows what a boat race is called?
Exactly.
And so you're absolutely right.
And like
that's
people
an
who
issue.
are more upper class and not in poverty have access to tutors and they have access to all this stuff. Yet people who need the most help are not like allowed access to it. And so I don't know. I think that IQ testing is very classist in the sense that like, why would you know the word regatta whenever you whenever you're living in poverty?
And even if and it's also regional too. Because if you're living in the Midwest, there's not a lot of boat races.
Exactly.
I don't know what a
Yeah.
regatta is.
Rural Arkansas or something like that. I guess that's not the Midwest.
And there's a
No,
lot
please.
of like unaccredited high schools and stuff, especially near like areas of poverty and
course.
so they're obviously not getting the education that they need to be able to perform well, and then they're just like hurt before, yeah.
Well, then the other thing, sorry, Zach.
No, sure, you started first.
The other thing about like intelligence testing and like in terms of using that to place people into different programs, it has this idea that like you are inherently able or unable to do things. And I feel like that ideology is fundamentally flawed. Like one of the things that we talk about in special education classes all the time is the fact that like people will surprise you if you let them. You know, if you don't put them in a box beforehand, then they have the potential to do something else, you know, something that you don't necessarily think they will do. And that's really important. And so like with intelligence testing of saying like, so you didn't succeed on this test, then you probably won't succeed in this class because you are incapable of doing so. And then it just limits it puts a cap on their achievement. It puts a cap on how much they're able to do because you assume that they can't do more.
I think
which like is valid in some senses. Like there's definitely like I wouldn't say that like this is a reason to like mainstream every single child into the same education because like there is differentiation that is needed. But I feel like the method that we should go about in terms of treating people is based off of like a situational task-based thing rather than an ability-based thing of you are inherently unable or you are inherently able.
I was just going to say, because in a lot of European countries, you're really tracked at 12 based on your test scores. And so if you don't score high enough in Germany at 12, then you're put into a vocational trade rather than college track or something like that. Zach, what were you going to say too?
I was just going to say, I agree with Maddy that you have to be really conscious of the social implications of what you're doing if you want to test large swaths of the population. Back in the 30s, we had camps full of people who performed poorly on IQ tests, and we would chemically castrate them so that they couldn't have kids. Which is, I don't think, the sort of thing we would do today. But it illustrates the fact that you have to be really careful about what you're trying.
Yeah, the ramifications of IQ testing. Absolutely. Any other thoughts about this?
Well,
Please,
it's just
Anne.
like popped in my head.
Uh-huh.
It's like I know that whenever you have like ADHD or some other kind of learning impediment, they will often, if you go to like, or email, or I don't really know exactly how it goes, but you can like talk to the heads of the ACT or who SAT
And get
you can
accommodations?
Get accommodations, and you can get extra time as long as you have the like specific like requirements in the papers and all that stuff. But
Sure.
what happens when people don't have healthcare but do have ADHD?
Right.
So it's like another
They're going to score
like,
lower
thing
than they would have.
that is like class based, where it's like, okay, I can't afford healthcare, but for the people that can afford healthcare, they do get those extra things, and they do get like extra time, and they do get extra help because of their impediments. But for those of us who can't afford the actual paperwork saying we're ADHD, but we can't pay attention, we can't intake stuff, we can't stay still, we can't do any of that, we're still gonna have to sit here and suffer through it. So I think that's another way that it can be class based or something like that.
IQ testing is a spooky topic in psychology. I think we can all agree on that. I'll finish by saying that my ACT was a 27. So if yours is higher, you're smarter than me. And I'm not a very smart person anyway.
I think I would do worse on the ACT now than I did whenever.
Because you cared about it,
Well,
and
and
you
like
worried about it.
I'm not like doing a bunch of math. I'm not doing a bunch of
Oh,
I'm not
true.
doing science.
Like in
Oh
high
my
school,
goodness.
yeah.
You know, so like
don't know
I
any
think maybe
algebra.
I would be all right in like the reading section, or I don't know if you guys took like the writing section, which was like an added part that you could add on if you were going to schools on the East Coast. You kind of had to do it in implementation for the SAT. but I had to do that too. And I think that maybe I would be better at that now, but like science, math,
Sure.
all that stuff,
Actually, you
My
remind me of
score's
something
probably
else too.
plummeted.
My middleest boy, he was taking the written part, and he had just finished Medea, which is a play, and that was one of the questions that you could write about in the writing section. So he got a 5 out of 5 because it was like, bam, he hit it perfect. Well, we're interested in your thoughts about intelligence testing too. So please leave a comment below and like our video and subscribe. And it seems like I'm forgetting something else too
No, that's
because of my low ACT.
Oh,
Okay.
comment? Is that?
Yeah.
Oh, comment. And thank you for watching.
I don't know if I was listening or not. That's
It's
my
okay.
concern.
I'm never listening to myself either.
Tell us how you scored.
Tell us how you got your ACT. I don't know if that should be public information though. But thank you for joining us for our discussion and have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I was rambling at the end. Sorry, guys.